It is also a response of some description to the YouTuber Nightmare Fuel, of whose existence I have only become aware in the past 24 hours. He made a truly appalling video called Skeptic Community Fails on Anti-Theism.
So the video he's talking about will be linked in the description box. Here's a brief overview. Basically, Reese, also known as Nightmare Fuel, released a video calling out some of the skeptic YouTubers for apologizing for religion. He found clips of them saying things like Christianity is needed, and showcased them while explaining why he thought they were wrong. Like I said, I'll link the video so you can watch it for yourself, but the main takeaway, at least from my point of view, is that many of these YouTubers, many of which got big criticizing religion, are now making excuses for those religions even though they don't believe in any god. I happen to agree with Reese. I understand why a Christian, a Muslim, a Hindu, or Mormon will defend their faith or belief in God. That makes total sense. Like Reese, I have a hard time understanding why someone who doesn't believe in God, who thinks these religions are not true, would simultaneously defend what they consider to be lies or untruths. Quite a few atheists will even argue that we need religion as a moral framework, or say that as a society, we need these religions to prosper. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's hear why the academic agent thinks Reese was wrong.
Which is a work of staggering hubris, the sort of which could only be produced by a young man so arrogant as to not realise that there may be some things that he doesn't know. Essentially, this was a video in which he criticised various members of the skeptic community for not being militant enough in their atheism.
Having watched the video in question, Reese never made the argument that he knows everything. His basic premise seemed to be that if you don't believe in God, or the religions that teach that belief, you should have the courage to say so without kowtowing to those religions. Oh, and I also skipped a few parts of the academic agent's video, but again, I'll leave a link so you can watch it for yourself. Moving on.
Including my good buddies Friended and Michelle Caitlin.
So, a few of the people Reese criticized were your friends. I do wonder whether that played some part in your defense. Not that there is anything wrong with that if you have good reasons for defending them, but having watched this video beforehand, I would like to point out that the academic agent really doesn't address much of what Reese had to say.
There is a story that we tell ourselves in the 21st century, and that is that religion was bad and caused people to kill each other, and since modern science has proved it to be false, we don't need it anymore, and now we can persist in our godless truth, and things will keep on getting better and better.
Religion has caused us to kill each other, and it continues to do so. Terrorists aren't martyring themselves for no reason. They often kill themselves because they've been convinced their God demands it of them. If you doubt that, you can watch videos or read what they've written for yourself. They're not shy about telling you why they want to kill the infidel. Second, religion is bad. They're not true, and we should be striving to rid ourselves of beliefs in ancient myths. If you're someone who doesn't believe these religions to be true, I'm not sure why you would promote them or make excuses for them.
So even though belief in organised religion has declined, religious style thinking continues unabated and quite often unacknowledged.
You mean superstitious thinking? Faith-based thinking? Of course it does, but that doesn't mean we should be promoting that sort of thinking. It doesn't mean we should be promoting things that are demonstrably false or apologizing for superstitious nonsense. It amazes me that we need to explain this to people. Look, if something isn't true, we should stand against it and explain why it isn't true, not base our lives and societies around those lies. It seems like pretty basic stuff here.
And in this video I want to look at some of the sorts of beliefs, he calls them delusions or myths, that continue to underlie our assumptions.
Which really has very little to do with what Reese was talking about in the video. But sure, let's have a look at what Gray had to say.
And John Gray says that the faith in many of these things is worse than Christian or standard faith.
Even if I were to grant you that the things you're about to mention are worse than religious faith, and I don't, but we'll say I do for the sake of argument, why would that in any way excuse spreading a less harmful faith? If they're both not true and both harmful, why would we not oppose both? Why wouldn't we strive towards creating something based around the truth as we currently understand it?
Because it maintains the worst elements of faith, which is dogmatism and intolerance, but dispenses with something that Christianity always teaches, which is to have humility enough to know what you don't know.
The humility to know what you don't know? You've got to be kidding me. The very foundation of Christianity, that there is a particular God, that it created the world, that it died for your sins, that it created you in its own image, that it cares deeply about you, and so forth, are all claims about knowledge they have no way of knowing. I mean, even many Christians will admit that, and acknowledge that you need faith in order to believe these things. And most atheists, and I would bet that Reese would agree, although I don't know for sure, will gladly admit that they don't know everything. That wasn't the argument Reese was trying to make in his video.
And to be humble enough not to fall prey to hubris and pride. Of course, the first sins in the Christian faith.
Pride, such as thinking you're going to heaven, but other people deserve to be tortured in a fiery pit, or the pride of thinking the creator of the universe cares about you on a personal level, and will even answer your prayers. That kind of humility.
In some respects, if you admit that what you're believing in is a miracle, that is something supernatural, something beyond our comprehension, you are in effect admitting your lack of knowledge and your lack of ability to know.
No. By saying you don't know something, you're admitting you don't currently know something. Believing in the supernatural, even though you have no evidence to support your claim, is not a form of humility, and it should be criticized. Saying you don't know something is the honest answer. Saying you do know something, which you clearly don't, is being dishonest.
But of course, modern skeptics like Nightmare Fuel have no such humility, and in fact, I would argue he is not skeptical at all.
So, let me get this straight. Your argument is that you have to believe in the supernatural in order to be considered a skeptic, because only by believing in such nonsense can you admit you don't know something. What? Also, he says in the video that he's open to new evidence to God, but at the current time he sees no good reason to believe in a God. What isn't skeptical about that? Why would you believe in supernatural claims without evidence to support that belief? How does any of that qualify or disqualify someone from being skeptical about this particular claim, which is that God exists and that specific religions understand what it wants from us?
But more of a dogmatist, more of a utopian, more of a idealist than any of the people that he criticizes in the video.
Being an idealist isn't necessarily a bad thing. Saying you want to live in a world where dogmatism and untrue religious faiths aren't promoted and excused by people who realize these religions aren't true isn't a bad ideal to hold. Saying you want to strive towards a world where reason and evidence are valued over faith isn't a bad ideal to hold. I doubt Reese or any other anti-theists think this is going to happen overnight, but that doesn't mean we should just throw up our hands and not even try. You talk about nihilism in this video, but honestly, Academic Agent, your views so far seem far more nihilistic than Nightmare Fuel's, far more negative and passive than his.
So just what are some of these narratives that we tell ourselves that, in Gray's view, border on religious faith? Well, number one is meliorism. That is the belief in progress, that everything keeps getting better. For Gray, as for Tom Sowell and others, this is utopian thinking, the unconstrained vision.
Sometimes things get better and sometimes they don't. Not sure what that has to do with Reese's argument, and I certainly don't see why meliorism would excuse defending other things that aren't true. Hell, even from a Christian perspective, you could easily make the case that their religious faith teaches meliorism. After all, you can't get much better than being reunited with your loved ones in a paradise called heaven, can you? Everything in this life is just a test of character that has to be suffered through. But if you can do that, everything will get better.
Second, there is this idea of secularization, the belief that cultures will keep getting less and less religious, and this will make them more peaceful. And this is demonstrably false. As I mentioned, the religious populations of Europe, of America, and indeed of China and other places have been growing. They've been getting more intense, not less.
The more secular countries are more peaceful than the more religious ones, especially if you take into account the theocratic ones. The world's happiest countries also tend to be the least religious. Do you really think countries like Ethiopia, Somalia, Afghanistan, and Egypt are more peaceful than countries such as Japan, Sweden, Norway, and Australia? Even if you compare China and a relatively religious country like America, you'll find that China ranks 83rd and America 30th in terms of crime levels. Now, I'm not saying China is a better place to live. I'd much rather live in a country like America because of the state violence found in China, and of course the level of freedom a US citizen enjoys, but crime rates aren't even close. And of course, there's more that goes into how peaceful a society is than just its level of religiosity. But to argue that religious countries are more peaceful than secular ones is just flat out false, and demonstrably so.
And can anybody really say that the world has been more peaceful since it became more secular? World War II suggests otherwise.
Yes, you can easily make the case that this is the most peaceful time in human history. Of course, modern technology ensures that world wars, such as World War II, will kill more people than medieval wars. It's easier to kill someone with a machine gun than a sword, but that doesn't mean we aren't at peace now. Worldwide violence is down. In pretty much every measurable way, we are living in the most peaceful time in human history. That doesn't mean there isn't work to be done or that a new world war couldn't break out tomorrow. But for right now, yes, we're lucky to be alive right now.
I mean, more people died in the 20th century than in the previous 10 centuries combined. And it was the least religious century to date.
And since then, battle deaths have continued to fall. Also, there are more people now than there were back then. And like I said, technology ensures that military conflicts will be more dangerous in terms of human casualties.
Number 3 is rationalism, the Enlightenment belief that reason can lead us towards the promised land. This led directly to both fascism and communism in the 20th century. Incidentally, if you want a really good critique of rationalism in politics, I would recommend the classic study by Michael Oakeshott.
I think that's a very simplistic view of what led to fascism or communism. Like I've heard Sam Harris often say, there's no society in human history that ever suffered because its people became too reasonable. Sounds about right to me. The academic agent makes a few more points, but they really have nothing to do with Reese's criticisms of the skeptic community, so I'm going to skip them. I urge you to check out the whole video if you're interested.
Now, I could go on. His assault on what passes for modern belief systems is pretty thoroughgoing, and like I said, borders on nihilism.
I wouldn't mind hearing why you think it borders on nihilism, because that's not what I took away from the video. It sounds more like you're using that word as a pejorative rather than because of its accuracy.
But you get the picture. I guess all I wanted to add to what Britisher said is that we should be ever vigilant about what bullshit we are buying into without realizing it.
Exactly why we should be opposing religion. It's full of bullcrap.
To an extent, we need these beautiful lies to function. Why else would we keep telling ourselves delusional narratives to give our lives purpose and meaning?
I disagree. I don't think we need these lies to function, and you can find a meaning outside of religion. Millions of atheists around the world do it daily.
And some people might argue that the truth of the matter is too unbearable to think about. And this is what I really wanted to get at. I think it's important to at once recognise that the narratives are useful, but also at the same time to recognise that most of them are bullshit. The truth of the matter is rarely so clear-cut. The truth of the matter is that anybody thinking skeptically, anyone thinking about these things at all, should have a reason to doubt any simple narratives about our world.
And religion is the simplest narrative ever concocted. In my opinion, this video was an utter failure, academic agent. You didn't address Nightmare Fuel's arguments, you made excuses, and bad ones at that. Now, someone might argue that Reese has a ham-fisted delivery, or that they don't enjoy his content for various reasons, but if you're going to critique someone's video, especially one that's around an hour and a half long and probably took hours to make, you should actually address their arguments and criticisms. This video just doesn't do that, and like I said in the comment section of your video, when fundamentalists like Max Colby laud your work, you might want to rethink your position. People like Dean love when atheists defend their religion, even if they think it's untrue. To people like him, atheist apologists are just weak, useful idiots. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching, take care, and cheers.